Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is troubled youth, and we're fortunate to have with us to talk about so many of our young people who are in trouble for a variety of reasons, a community organizer, a person who has been involved in the community of Nashville for a number of years, Mr. HLove Jr. And of course, Mr. Love, let me welcome you to the show this morning and to tell you how delighted we are to have you, and to also remind our audience that you are sitting in the same seat that a long time ago your father was sitting in on this very same show. And so we're just glad to have you, and to know that you are in a real sense continuing a tradition of being involved in the community and being an organizer and being an activist. Let's have you to give us some information about your background,
Sure.
Your education, and some of the things that were important in terms of bringing you to us this morning, and then we'll talk about some of the problems that many of our youth are having this morning.
Certainly, Dr. Haney, glad to be here this morning. Thank you for the invitation. Just a little bit about myself. I'm a product of the Nashville public school system. I graduated with honors from Whites Creek High School, then went on to college at Tennessee State University, where I received a degree in economics and finance. And I'm now in a PhD program in public administration at Tennessee State, trying to complete my requirements for that. And so I've gone through the gamut of the public school system. And of course, it's been a great privilege to be here in Nashville and to service our great communities and to try to give back to worthwhile organizations and to invest in our communities, which is so important as we talk about the importance of our young adults seeing persons who present a positive image to them. I think it's important for us to give back, and so that's part of my story. The fifth of 4 girls and myself, born to my mother and father. Of course, my father, as you stated, a member of the Tennessee General Assembly for about 24 years. My mother, a director of the Upward Bound program at Tennessee State University for a number of years. And so these kinds of opportunities provided for me the foundation for understanding how important it was to give back to our young people so that they may have role models that they may look to for guidance in their lives.
You know, when we talk about troubled youth, and I know that your resume would indicate that you've been involved with a lot of young people, you see, and what would you say up front as we make preparations in the middle of this for our first commercial break? What would you say up front is the real problem that you've identified with many of our youth today?
There's an opportunity to ask young people to make preparation for their future. You talk about a young person understanding what it means to plan for their lives. When you get up in the morning, what is it that you want to do for that day? Do you have a plan? You want to get up, you want to go to your job, you want to complete some tasks, and you want to come back home. That's your plan for your day. In the same manner, we'll sit down and plan out what I want to do for that day. I write down what stops I have to make. So in the same manner, for our young people and our young adults, it's an opportunity for us to ask them at a very young age, start planning out what you want to do for your day, because it then leads into you being able to plan out what you do for your life. Where do you want to be in 5 years if you are a college freshman? Then you back that up and say, where would you want to be in 5 years if you are a high school freshman? Then you can back that up further and ask the middle school students, where would you want to be in 5 years if you are a 6th grader? If they can correctly articulate that they at 6th grade want to be in high school, and then a freshman in high school, they say, I want to be a freshman in college, and then a freshman in college says, well, I hope to graduate and get me a job. What you see is opportunities for them to plan what they want to. Planning is, I think, the very key to it, because it says that you're thinking about where you want to be instead of just simply saying, well, I don't know.
That is
what do you want to do in 5 years? I don't know. Where do you want to be in 10 years? I don't know. These kind of responses allow for trouble to come in between where they are and where they will be in 5 years, 10 years, because if a person has no plan, right, then anything can come in there and start to plan their lives. So if my day is not full of going to the dry cleaners, going to the grocery store, going to pick up some things that I need and then come back home, then somewhere in my day's journey, when friends come and say, hey, let's go to this place over here where trouble is. I have no plans. I very often may go ahead and go because I have nothing else to do.
Nothing else to do. And in reality, you have not made any plans, as you're indicating.
Yes, sir.
And so it's important for them, as you speak to them this morning, to recognize that what they have to do is consciously say, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, and et cetera, and try to stick with that plan. Is that what we're saying?
Exactly. And for parents, you can start at a very early age, again in middle school, talking to the 8th graders and saying, listen, what kind of job do you want to do?
Okay, let's make this break here, Brother Love, and then we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to HLove Jr. and he's talking about troubled youth and how young people ought to, not only young people, but how people ought to plan their day and other things of interest that might be of some concern. Let's, Harold, sort of pick up where we left off and talk about some of your experiences during this time.
Well, for the past 6 years, I have been working with the 18th Avenue Family Enrichment Center. They're on the corner of D.B. Todd and Osage. It has been in service since 1934, and we provide daycare for children 6 months to 5 years. And even in those age ranges of 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds, we talk about trying to provide for them substantive opportunities to plan out their days and to provide for them well-meaning educational experiences. But that is exactly the type of thing that I'm talking about, Dr. Haney. Even at our youngest age, we need to put into our children's mind the importance of planning. Our teachers have lesson plans. They know what they want to teach the children during the day. When they have lesson plans, that doesn't allow anything outside that is not productive to come in. But if a teacher were to simply say, well, we're just going to sit here today and see what happens. Well, that allows for confusion to come into the classroom. But instead, the teacher has a plan for the children for that particular day, and it goes up for each grade successively. So then we ask the question, what happens when the child leaves the teaching environment? What happens when the child leaves the early learning center or the school? What happens when a child leaves high school and then on their way home to do their homework, they run across friends or persons who are in their same age range who didn't go to school that day, and their friends have plans that are not productive, all right? Sometimes, Dr. Haney, bad friends can ruin good morals.
Good, okay.
And so we're talking about our high school students who need to be guided and directed in a manner to say, okay, my plan today is to go home, do my homework, and to do some things around the house that would make my parents proud, like cleaning up my bedroom, like folding up my clothes, like maybe washing some clothes, sweeping around the house, doing these things so that their parents can see that my child is productive, my child has a plan. And I'll tell you very personally, Dr. Haney, that when I am on a mission to go somewhere, when I know I have to get to the bank before the bank closes, got to cash a check or get to the bank so I can deposit a check, friends will call, and I would say, listen, I got to call you back because I got some place I have to be.
Because that's a plan.
That's a plan, and I can't let anyone distract me from doing that. There may be some times, Dr. Haney, I'll be very honest, when there may be a sale on at Dillard's or someplace, and I got to get over there before the sale ends, and I tell friends, hey, I got to get there before the sale ends. I have a plan. And so in all facets of life, we're talking about how do you then put a plan together that is productive, a plan together that's not going to distract from societal norms, and a plan that's going to allow you to be a good person in our society. And then when you have persons who come into your path and into your area and say, listen, go with us here, you ought to be able to say, no, I can't go because I have a plan. So maybe my plan is to go to college, or maybe my plan is to go and learn a trade so I can get a good job and earn some money and provide for my family in a productive, good manner that is not going to cause me to be breaking the law. So now when those come from the outside and say, well, listen, why don't you go and engage in these activities with us? I can't. That should be the response. I can't because I have a plan that I have to stick to, and the plan involves me doing something productive rather than something destructive. And so what we find is when our young adults don't have a plan, then very often they engage in doing destructive things because that's what comes into their path is the destructive mentality.
Well, what would you say to those who aspire to be leaders? I mean, that there are certain things that they must do in education and et cetera.
One thing we talked about is the fact that some communities do not cultivate leadership very well. And when we do not cultivate leadership and leaders, then when leaders go off the scene, we find ourselves scrambling, trying to find a leader to fill a void, trying to put someone in the spot, when we should really be in the process of taking our young people and our young adults to the place to say, hey, here's how we're going to cultivate you for leadership. I had one of the best cultivators in my life, my father. My father was a state representative here from 1968 to 1994, and without fail, I would go down to his office after school, I would be in his office, he would take me to the committees that he was either chairing or sitting on, and I would sit in that committee room and I would listen and I would learn. He would take me to meetings. He'd say, I need to show you how state government runs. And then when we left from those meetings, he would take me out into the community and say, I got to go and talk to these folks over here at the community center. I got to go over here and talk to these folks. I want you to come with me so you can see how leadership
operates. On-job training.
It's right. It's not just in the plaza, in the legislative plaza in the Capitol, but it's also out here in our community. So that allowed me to cultivate or be cultivating leadership. Then my mother took me out on TSU's campus. She said, I want you to see how my program runs, how Upward Bound runs. I want you to come out here and see how we tutor these students, how we help them get a head up in the academic progress. And so it allowed me to then see my mother also providing a meaningful program for high school students between the ages of, at that time, 13 and 18, freshmen in high school to seniors in high school, to see how she all did her program. And then I began to be very engaged in the Upward Bound program, which was then the foundation for me to then get involved with students in college with their different organizations, and it got me involved with NAACP.
Long before you reached the college scene itself.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then to be able to give back once I got out of the college scene and say, I know what you may be dealing with, let me help you. And it also allowed me to then be able to go back down to the plaza and the Capitol and say to some of our legislators, is there anything that I can do to help make your job easier? How can I help make your work that you want to do out in the community easier for you? Just simply give me the task, I'll go along with you.
Very good. And of course, those young people who are troubled. Now, some folks talk about the need for some kind of jobs and economic situations that many of our young people find themselves in. You know, it's one thing, as we can make preparations for this second commercial break, it's one thing to talk about planning and et cetera, but so many of our young people are sort of put into a situation where they don't have jobs, they don't have the opportunity and et cetera, and while others might be doing some good planning, they are often the ones that have these other ideas as to what we ought to do. And so when we come back during the second session, this final section, as a matter of fact, I want you to deal with young people who have somehow gone off the track.
Sure.
Because I think, as you know, and certainly as you talk about all the time, that your father was involved in trying to guide and whatever. And so when we come back, I want you to talk about some of his experiences and some of your experiences of dealing with those young men and women who have been incarcerated, and what are some of your suggestions as to how we as a society might be able to deal with it. I think that would be one of the most productive things that we could do during this final segment, to have your point of view in reference to that. And we will be back with our audience after this very, very short commercial break. Thank you, and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to HLove Jr., and he's talking about some of the issues involved with some of our young people that we've described as troubled youth this morning. And son of Representative HLove. Harold, let's see if we can pick up and to talk about some of the young people who have fallen through cracks, young people who might be incarcerated, and some of the things that might be involved in reference to how we can counsel them and deal with them.
Well, and I have to be very honest with you, Dr. Haney. I grew up in a house where my parents loved me and my sisters loved me. And so when we talk about what direction our children go in, we must address the issue of how much self-love they have. How much value and worth do they think that they have, not just to the larger society, but to themselves. And so when a child has low levels of self-love, then they allow themselves to be pulled into directions that are not beneficial to them. When they don't understand the value and worth that they have to their family, to the larger society, then they won't have any motivation. So part of our task is to get to the place where we as a community pour back into them what they may be lacking. This is where the uncles and the grandfathers and the cousins and the aunts and the grandmothers get to pour back into, but also where the neighbors and the church members, right, and the pastor, the whole village pours back into the child. Say, hey, I know you may have had a rough childhood. Maybe your father wasn't in the home. Maybe your mother wasn't. Maybe your grandmother is raising you. Maybe your grandfather is raising you. But there is a faith community around you that loves you. There is a neighborhood around you that loves you, and we value you, and we think that you are worth something. And as much as we value you, we want to see you do the best in life. And so this will put that child on the track to say, somebody does love me. Good. Somebody does care for me. Somebody does think that I'm worth something. And if somebody thinks that of me, then I got to do something to validate their love and the self-worth that they think that I have. That was one thing that kept pushing me in my young adult years. I would say, you know, my parents have done a good job with loving me. And so I can't return their love with my bad behavior. So, you know, as of course all children make mistakes and you go through those periods, but you have an awakening where you say, you know, I got to do better. I got to live a good life, and I got to go out here and do something that's good and productive in society. So I think part of what we deal with is the fact that many of our children are walking around with misconceptions of what it means to love themselves.
All right, good.
And if you don't know how to love yourself, then you'll allow anyone to treat you any old kind of way. If you don't love yourself, then you will allow yourself to look any old kind of way, and you will think less of yourself. It's nothing wrong with you getting up and taking care of yourself and going out here and trying to make something good of your day and your activities. So again, everybody's not going to go to college. Everybody is not going to be able to go through that track, but everybody can go out here and learn a skill and get a good paying job, and then get in a community that surrounds them with love, and then raise their children in an environment that is loving. If you're a mother or a father who didn't have a loving parent in the household, that does not mean that you can't be a loving mother and a father. So you can still exhibit that same kind of love that maybe you didn't see because you know what you were lacking. You say, you know, I would have liked for someone to do these things for me, and so I'm going to do this for my child. So I think when we talk about the issues and the ills of our society, what it is that causes our children to veer from the track of righteousness and to instead pursue the track of unrighteousness, we must include the fact that some of them need to see examples of what it is to be loved and to love. And so we talk about the need to invest back in our children.
Okay.
It's the very first thing, all right? We must be very careful about how we speak to our children, how we say things in their ears that they hear that do not build them up, but instead tear them down, making comments to them about how they just like their father or just like their mother, and they're no good, and you never amount to anything. These are not productive things to say to a child, because the child will internalize those things and then say, well, if I'm not worth anything, why should I ascribe or live for anything that is good? And so when the child goes through adolescence and the child maybe doesn't develop the right skills at the right time for good behavior, we can still then invest in that child and say, keep trying, keep pursuing what is right, and keep giving it a good effort, and we will see that you will then produce good things. And then as a child in the young adult years, or in, you know, in 20s, 21s, 22 age range, when they make mistakes, when they've graduated from college or they've gone to a trade school and they've learned a trade, we can then still see to that child, all right, as you progress through this period in your life, keep doing what is right and what is productive. Keep going over those speed bumps in life and keep pursuing what is good and what is worthy.
Very good, and I think that that's a good prescription for not only our young people, but I think that everybody who might be caught up in something like that. And it has quite a bit to do with how a child perceives the love that the significant persons around him display toward that child.
Yes,
So what you're saying is if there's a lot of love displayed toward that child, then that child will eventually become a loving kind of child. Is that what we're saying?
My parents never said to me that I was worthless. My parents never said to me that I was
ain't no good.
And so they kept saying to me when I would make mistakes, you're better than the decision that you made. You did wrong, but we know you're better than the decision. So we know that you can do right and you can make good decisions. So go out here and display to us what we believe to be true about you. And that would encourage me to say, you know what, I am better than the decision that I made. I made the wrong decision, and now I'm going to go out here and I'm going to make the right decision, because that's who I am, and that's who my parents expect me to be. But when we don't have that being fed into us, all right?
That's right.
Prime example, your car, my car, takes gasoline, right? If I were to pour into my car or your car cooking oil from the kitchen, it's not going to run.
That's right.
It's not going to do it. That's not what it needs to run, all right? So I got to give it what it needs to run. So too we have to give our young adults and our children what they need to run. They need positive words. They need words of encouragement. They need someone to believe in them, to say, I know you're better than the decisions that you made. We accept you made the wrong decision. Let's move beyond that now. You've learned your lesson, and let's go forward to something that's positive.
And then we would be able to really solve a lot of the problems that we have in our society today.
We'd begin to knock down that wall that has been building up, which is full of wrong decisions, which causes, unfortunately, 14 and 15-year-olds to go out here and shoot somebody, take somebody's life. and not understand the meaning of life itself because they have no plan. The plan is to live for today, to live fast and to live hard, to make quick and easy money and endanger the lives of others, but they have no plan. Somewhere along the line, someone did not invest and love them and assure them that they were worth something. They were worth more than sleeping at night wondering if someone might come and kill you because you killed somebody. I sleep easy at night because I know I have not killed anyone, I have not robbed anyone, I have not done these things, and I'm not fearful of someone returning to me retribution for what I've done to them.
And it seems to be that that's a lot of that's going on now. All you have to do is look in the newspaper every day and you find that quite a number of young people become involved in violence.
Yes, sir.
Young people,
yes,
too.
Sir.
I mean, people who in a real sense
who have no plan.
That's exactly it. Have no plan.
Have no plan for their lives.
Cut off their lives
in
a real sense.
If you would ask them how long they expect to live, they would not say, I want to live to retirement.
Okay.
They don't retire at 65. They are killed before they reach the age of 40 and sometimes before they reach the age of 30. That's their plan, to live for now.
Yeah,
but we got to invest in them and say, you can do better than that. You are better than the decision that you made. You can live to 65 or 70 or 80 if you would just invest in planning for your life.
And it takes good adults,
yes, sir,
good parents, good caregivers to recognize that and be able to articulate those words to children rather than those negative things. Is that what we're saying?
Very often when I'm at church with the children who come in from ages 6 to 18, every Sunday I ask them, what did you learn in school this week? And I make them think about, what did I learn? Okay, and I make them tell me, what did you learn? And very often go by their schools. And I'll tell them on Sunday, I said, I went by your school last week. You did? I said, yes, sir, I checked on you, made sure you're doing all right in class. Because it also lets them know that I love them and that I care for their welfare and their benefit.
Very good. And of course, we're ending the show for today, Brother Love. And I certainly appreciate the information that you gave us. And I think that if our young people and even if our elders can understand some of the things that you're saying here, I think we'll have a better situation in terms of dealing with some of the violence and some of the unconcern that we have in our society today. And let me encourage you to tune in again next week to another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.